to have you on our Let's Talk About Lebanon. And we are honored to have all these participants with us. I just want to say that this Let's Talk About Lebanon is an initiative that offers a platform to have a casual exchange between our guests and our participants. But and it's started by initiated by مغتربين مجتمعين Ohio and لحقي North America. But with that being said, the both parties, مغتربين مجتمعين and لحقي, do not endorse any opinion or suggestion or point of view of the speakers or the participants. We are supposed to offer both parties a safe a platform to have a casual exchange and answer questions or, you know, address some concerns. With that being said, I hope you enjoy your session, this session with us. And Zahi, right back at you.
Awesome. That's a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics muted, and we'll get to everyone's questions, and I'll be able to unmute everyone, and they can ask their question. It's best if they do the raise the hand feature, or you can always ask your question in the Q&A section. All right, so let me start with talking about opportunities. We don't all have equal opportunities, but even the biggest complainers among us cannot doubt we all have the opportunity to become more than we currently are. We all have the opportunity to be and do better than we did yesterday. Most of us will never see the abundance of opportunities that lie right in front of our faces because we are too busy making excuses as to the reasons why our lives are no good, rather than seeking opportunities to be better every single day. When you seek improvement, you find improvement. To get to improvement and to break the barriers stopping you from getting to your opportunity, you need to overcome evil in all its forms, internal and external. The reasons why evil succeed more often than not, is because they seize opportunity. And the single biggest reason why evil triumphs over good is because good people choose to do nothing. However, we feel as لحقي and مغتربين مجتمعين that times are changing, and you notice that more good than evil are making their way للثورة. In the end, the power is from the people, الأول الناس, and only they can make that decision. Lastly, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. I choose these words from Martin Luther King Jr. because he also understood struggle and hate. And in the end, his words of love were more powerful than those that spread hate, and his power was contagious, that you had to accept it with open arms and love. So يا لبنانية حبوا بعض جاي قوة جديدة. All these can become reality if we vote. This is the only way to change the culture of government and establish the rule of law. Today, our guest is the representation of the fear for those that have power but no love. He's a builder of leaderships and the seeker of paths. Abou Malham, our guest and a candidate in the 2018 elections for Alay with Kulluna Watani, is an organizational effectiveness consultant and a leadership coach who specializes in building collective efficiency through individual autonomy. His key focal points are assessing structures and talents, mining their potential, and co-creating the climate needed for organizational and individual leadership. He's a graduate from Jumhur College, AUB, ESA, INSEAD, and has 25 years of professional experience. He has witnessed the power of servant leadership and individual engagement in times of change. He is passionate about history and politics that only serves the common good. Carl is a firm believer that diversity is wealth and real efficiency is shifting from individual heroes to collective power. So Carl, let's talk about Lebanon.
Thank you, Hind and Zahi. Thank you very much for this introduction. In fact, I would like to pick on what you said about opportunity and share with you a very simple, pragmatic sentence. Opportunity dances with those who are on the dance floor. So basically, you have to be ready to be able to get any opportunity. And coming back to tonight's topic, we can either make the opportunity or take the opportunity. What's important is to take a stand. When we decided to run for elections in 2018, we were a bunch of people nobody had heard of. We had the enthusiasm, the love for the country, and the passion to try something, even though we knew that we wouldn't necessarily succeed, but trying was the objective. Taking a first step was the objective. Most of the time when you start a new venture or when you start a new project, the most difficult thing is to take the first step. And this is why I wanted to give it the title, Taking a First Step. But as you will see in my presentation, this first step was easy on us. And now the tough part will be on all of us, all the attendees and the people who want to be active during the next elections. Because at the time we were the underdogs, we had votes of sympathy, but we're not structured enough. And what I would like to share with you today is first a quick glimpse of what happened in 2018, then the key learnings and the most important opportunities going forward. So without further ado, I would like to share with you a quick presentation that I did. I have 10 minutes for the presentation. Great. Okay, so very quickly, so 2018 elections was our first step to move from individual heroes to collective power. Because if we always oppose individuals to individuals, we will never, ever make a step forward. The main edge that we can have versus the establishment, versus the mafia and militia, as they call it, is to constitute a collective thrust, a collective team that works for the common good, or some people would say the commonwealth, but I prefer the common good, and oppose a team to an individual. So we had individual heroes. There are lots of us today who are individual heroes, but the idea is to learn to work collectively and use or harness the collective power to become an even higher power facing this establishment. So very quickly, the outline for the presentation, I will first share a quick background, then the setting, our program at the time, key learnings and opportunities, and then what are my key ideas going forward. Starting with the background, it was the same in 2016, 18, and it's the same today. I call it a highly dynamic decay because as a collective, as a culture, as a socio-economic hub, Lebanon is in decay, and it's a dynamic decay. And I would like different layers because these involve us. So the first layer was, or the surface layer was the surface infringements, which were faced by social protests like Talat Rihatkum in 2015 and 16. This was the first time the collective or the people who are not part of the regime was starting to voice and raise their voices, to voice their concern and raise their voices. I call it teenage protests because these were social protests and we were simply saying no. We were rejecting, but without necessarily offering a solution. The second stage aimed with active alternatives of social political governance versus rampant corruption, because the surface infringements were so arrogant, but they were only the indicators of how much the country or the economical system was corrupted. So after the teenage social protests, some of us started offering alternatives, socio-political governance, like Sakkir al-Dakkani. So we were trying to start offering solutions. But the wound is much deeper than that, and the solution should be much deeper. This is why 2018 was our chance to pool resources to challenge the establishment. So going from a protest and rejecting the surface infringements to working against rampant corruption, to actually challenge the establishment where they knew they would win. But at least we were raising our voices and making them see that they could not get away with it as easily. And ultimately what we want is a civic transformation at the core versus the tribal conditioning we are in. And this is our long-term action. There's a great book in Arabic that was written by Samaht Sheikh Fadlallah. And it's called in Arabic, Umara wa Qaba'il, Princes and Tribes. This described Lebanon throughout the history, and I think it still describes the Lebanese society. And our challenge as Mujtama'in Muqtadin, as Lihaqi, as a civil society, our challenge is to be able to allow the qualitative side in us, make us move from our tribal conditioning, from our small perspectives to join the common good or the commonwealth. So it's actually an action of education and communication. Ideally, we should work on the climate, and today the climate, in 2018 and today, the climate were quite positive for change. People were asking about change, they were protesting for change, they were doing lots of things for change, but 2018 showed us that they were not as ready as we wanted them, which means that we need to start working on our communication, on our rules of engagement, in order to get engagement from the people who will be voting in the next phase. So this is the pyramid of change, the way I see it. Working on the climate, perfecting our communication and the rules of engagement to create an atmosphere of engagement on part of the people who will be voting. Now, the setting for 2018, I was working as a consultant. I was helping a couple of NGOs on consulting work. And then I realized how much I wanted to make a change. So I started working on a project for solar farm. Then I started working with a couple of friends on rehabilitating the railway, to use it for a different option. And this is how I started getting enthusiastic about implementing 2 or 3 ideas. This is how I met Lihaqi. So I volunteered to help that collective. It was a collective with a non-legal name, which was Lihaqi. Now it's legal. So it was a collective working on Ali Shuf area to help with socio-economic initiatives in order to prepare for the elections. So the first step was to volunteer to help them. The second step is that I was super energized by their passion, the spirit, and their means. And I was attracted to the fact that they were the underdogs, and I wanted to help them more actively. And when I say I wanted to help them, because I think there was an age difference, there was a background difference. All these guys were political and social activists. I'm not. I'm a consultant and someone who has been in business. While I love politics, I was never actually active in Lebanese politics. They made me interested in being active, but being active as a contributor, not as a main actor. This is where they asked me if I would like to be a candidate. And they took me through a vetting process. And at the end of the vetting process, they told me, we would like you to be our candidate. And I told them, no, I'm not interested in politics. It's not me. I'm not one who would congratulate or pay condolences to people I don't know. And I'm not someone who would do things for people to like me. I'm someone who's quite idealistic, and I don't want to compromise on my principles and values. And this is where they told me, well, this is why your profile is interesting for us. And they convinced me to step up and to present myself in an area where I originate from, but that I had never actually lived in. So I lived most of my life between Beirut and Matan. My childhood was in the Shuf area, and here I was presenting my candidacy in the Alay area, which is my my civil registry. So I took the chance because I knew it was an adventure worth taking, and I knew that the stakes were not very high. I mean, nobody knew me, but I wanted to contribute to that project. And I said, okay. And next slide will share with you how we were seeing things at the time. So we were actually opposing traditional parties as a group called Lihaqi, part of a national alliance called Kulluna Watani, that wanted to present candidates all through Lebanon at the same time. And these were the candidates of the so-called opposition. When I say so-called, because some of them were opposition, some others were not really opposition, but we were the other force. There was the establishment and the political parties and the other force. And we were part of that other force. Now, if we compare the claims, to us, the traditional parties were about the anti-elections. It wasn't taking people's votes to get these votes to the parliament and use these votes for the common good. It was parties who kidnap the votes, and the voters are accountable to the party. أنت محسوب علينا ولو. So we count on your vote. We come to you one day every 4 years. We ask you to give us our vote, and then we forget about you until the next elections. And for us, this was what we call the silverback gorilla leadership. So it's leadership 101, where you have one leader and only followers who want to remain followers. The بالروح بالدم نفديك يا زاهي. This was everything we wanted to oppose. On the other hand, our means or our objectives were to upgrade political practice, were to show the example versus eliminate. We never actually had the idea to eliminate other political parties because we knew that some political parties had good talents, they had good candidates, and their practices were wrong. So we wanted to lead by example. We wanted to show the example, hoping that we would actually get the political parties to practice politics in a different way, more skewed towards the citizens. We wanted to build a first bond with the free minds, the ones we called al-mutaharririn, the people who wanted to free themselves from their tribes, from their religious belonging, from their political families, people who wanted to vote with their conscience and for the common good. It was we as a team versus I versus the traditional parties. The traditional parties had the list of X and Y and Z. We had a team. Our approach to leadership was that of servant leadership. We were here to serve the people, to work for the common good, and we absolutely wanted to walk the talk. And it was an easy positioning because the traditional parties do the exact opposite. They just talk and actually never do. So it was easy for us. Unfortunately, as you know, for the results, it's a good fortune we couldn't leverage enough for many reasons. But looking at the pyramid that carried us all through these elections, we had a dedicated network of rebels appealing to people who wanted to rebel and free themselves. We had a data bank that wasn't really a very sophisticated one, and we were working on the ground. There was a wind of change, and we decided to surf the wave. We had results, we had good results, We probably had the best results as a Kuluna Watani list in a region, but these results were not enough. What was the positioning? The positioning was, we are the change. So while parties were striking alliances amongst each other, our only covenant was with the people for 4 things. 1, to enact administrative decentralization. 2, to implement a development plan with 9 priorities that I will share with you and reachable goals. 3, to strive to build good governance. 4, to advocate transparency. And at the time, for the Alay area, we wanted to put forth the idea of an accountability committee of 6 members changing every 6 months to make sure that the Qada or the Kaza is well taken care of. So we wanted decentralization, we wanted a clear development plan with priorities and KPIs or key performance indicators. We wanted to build a better governance, and we wanted to advocate transparency. This was our program in a nutshell. Together, we can make the Shuf Alay region a role model for good governance. And for us, it was Hamlet al-Mutaharririn, the campaign of the freed people. And we didn't actually want people's vote, we wanted their contribution. While other parties wanted the votes to kidnap them, we wanted contribution because our objective was to get everyone to work towards the program. Our priorities in a nutshell, we had 5 areas. So economic health, with creating a regional incubator in ecotourism, craftsmanship, agriculture, and IT. The objective was to create 500 SMEs that would employ 5 to 20 people, creation of economical council, rehabilitate the Beirut-Sofa railway as a tramway network, because the rails are there, but they cannot really get the weight of the modern trains, but they can perfectly be used as a tramway network. We wanted to have a new governance structure for the Kaza, for Alay, in terms of economic health. In terms of water resources, we were planning 7 key projects by 2030, implementing 4 by 2025. And these were mainly rainwater reservoirs. And we can discuss it later, but time does not allow to go in depth here. We had a priority in terms of waste management solution to have 2 waste treatment plants, one in the Jird, one in the Sahel. Power supply with 2 solar farms and 1 large aeolian farm. And then education with 1 technical university and 3 new generation schools in Alay, Ain Darab, Hamdoun, and Chouaifet. These were our dreams, these were our priorities. And for each priority, we had a key indicator that would tell us if we're getting a satisfying outcome and if we're on the right track or not. This 3-month-old collective came fourth in the Shuf Alay area with 6% of votes. Another list of the civil society got 2%. So together we had around 12,000 votes, which could have qualified one of our candidates to become a member of the parliament. We were short of that. Now, we had no media budget, no real coverage, no campaign budget, and we were happy not to have a campaign budget because we didn't want to have our ugly faces on every billboard across town. What we wanted is our program to be there. We had a recent network of people in the villages, and we had no leader, and it was done on purpose. But on the other side, we had pre-voting intentions that took us between 5 to 10%. The early surveys, active mapping of the villages. We connected with what we thought were the 50% of abstainers. So we were going village by village, meeting with people who were the undecided people, the ones who would make a difference. And we ultimately were able to convert 9,985 voters with, one has to admit, very low success with abstainers, because 2018 elections still carried its load of 48 to 51% of non-voters. And this was a key learning for us. So next step is to look at these abstainers and see how we can convert them. Key learnings and opportunities. 2018 was just the first step. Passion and willingness are great, but they're not enough. We need a deep-rooted strategy and structure to move from sympathy votes to real contribution. People voted for us because we were the underdogs, because we were against the Hulk, the monsters. But our program was too recent. Our actions were not really there to convince them or to convince more people to vote for us. We wanted our actions to speak for us, and we were too young to have actions that would speak for us. So we need strategy and structure. We also need a common purpose. So we need to use our diversity to build a common purpose. Kuluna Watani was a tactical platform. I mentioned that it was 3 months old. It was an alliance that would face the establishment, but we absolutely need to prepare the next elections with a common purpose, different groups working towards the same goal. We need to transform the circle of solidarity into an ongoing interactive connection. We don't want spectators, we want actors. We want people to contribute with us, to take part of those elections in an active way, and we want to have an ongoing connection with them. This is how we prepare an election. It's not waiting for the last 3 months and have a number of volunteers in every village to count the votes. This is not how you prepare elections. We start preparing elections yesterday by communicating with people, listening to people, building a program, co-building a program with people, and making sure those people will actively contribute and take ownership of these elections. We need to invest time and efforts into building productive networks, getting people to move from their tribes, religions, and families to become free citizens, and then work towards the common good. This is a whole transformation program. It's a very ambitious one, but all of you listening today know people around you who made this transition, who made this morphing from a tribesman to a free citizen who wants to work on common good. Last but not least, it is knowing the way, showing the way, and going the way. So network, structure, strategy, all these are not enough. What is needed is an action stream on the ground. So we can start preparing elections as of now to show people what we can do on the ground. Diaspora is not a sounding board. It is a key dynamic for al-Mutaharririn. When the guys asked me if I would like to talk, I said yes, of course, because to me, diaspora is the engine for the next elections. We're not people we're just doing a belly dance to get their vote. We people, we ambition to enlist, to work with us on the same project. So we want your contribution, we don't want your votes. Going forward, you are actors of change, you are not mailboxes. Your contribution is not just a number of votes, it is above all qualitative. What do we mean by that? First, you guys have a fresh, wider perspective because you're away from the local biases. You can connect our dots. You have the distance and the perspective to make connections we do not necessarily see while we are on the ground in Lebanon. You build bridges. Unfortunately, in Lebanon, we build walls. So here we have 2 organizations working together for this set of conferences and webinars. I know that more than 2 organizations are building bridges amongst each other, connecting with each other to work together towards the same objective. We're also taking your example, and we were able on, by last August, end August, we were able to build a common program with other organizations, but we're still early on that route. You guys have a communication outside of Lebanon that is smoother than the one we have in Lebanon. This is why you're able to build bridges versus the walls that we have here. You have the organizational capabilities and readiness. Away from tribes, you are free citizens joining for a common good. I have a daughter who lives in France. I have an interest in a business in Canada, and I see how enthusiastic and passionate are the people outside of Lebanon. Suddenly, two Lebanese who in Toronto, Washington, London, or Paris hug each other and want to spend time together, no matter what's their religion, where they come from, what's their village, which school they were in, which university they were in, and they automatically become a circle of solidarity. This dynamic, this momentum is amazing, and we have to use it to build organizational capabilities and build readiness for the next elections. You have the capacity to mobilize and build on diversity. We're trying to do that. And you're living in a dynamic, successful governance model. So you have lots of best practices you can share for ongoing improvement. Our idea is to build or to co-build a model that will constantly be improved. For those of you who are familiar with the Kaizen model, the idea is to get one improvement every day. And those of you who live in Northern Europe, Southern Europe, North America, Dubai, Singapore, everywhere you are, you live in countries that have better governance models than the ones we have in Lebanon. So we can use your learnings, we can use your best practices to improve the Lebanese model. This is the last, or the slide before last. I spoke about the key learnings going forward, but I would also like to tell you to watch out and to mind the traps, because every human being has his own internal saboteurs as an individual, and these saboteurs become more important as a group. So mind the trap of our own internal saboteurs, and beware that the people who are not part of the establishment are actually an object of a seasoned psychological warfare in terms of media that belongs to this establishment, rumors that are spread by this establishment, lots of practices they have been experiencing for the past 20, 30, 40 years, and they're very good at, to anchor us, to make us doubt our availability, and sometimes even to get us to become overconfident. And here I would like to talk to you about the time and efforts that should be equally invested in concept, action, and communication to build the bridges, and to beware of the traps, or what I call the biases. Before I go to the biases, let me give you what I call the bridge example. There are two schools of thought. There is the school that would like to build on the map the perfect bridge before they actually build it. And by the time they have the perfect bridge in the plans, the need for that bridge is not there anymore. And there's a school of thought that says, we need a bridge, let's build the first bridge and then improve it as we go. Let's do a first trial, consolidate it, strengthen it, make it larger, add stuff to it as we go. This school, the one that says fire, shoot, aim, is the school I'm inviting you to be part of. Don't spend too much time working on concepts, ideas. Make sure that concept is 1/3, action is 1/3, and communication is 1/3. Because you have to mind the following traps. One is the anchoring trap, and this is when we give a disproportionate weight to the first info we are fed, most of the time by the establishment. The other one is the status quo trap, favoring alternatives that perpetuate the existing solution. Why to vote? Anyhow, we're not going to make a difference. Why to cast my vote? Anyhow, my voice is not heard. The third trap is the sunk cost trap. It's whenever we make choices in a way that favors the past. We cannot still live in the past. You guys who are listening to this webinar today have left Lebanon. You chose a new future. You chose to take a new path. So mind the gap and beware of the trap of living in the past. The fourth trap is confirming evidence. So whenever we seek information that supports our existing point of view, our connection today, our webinar, is about listening to each other, opening up, hearing new perspectives, hearing new points of views, and making sure we learn something new to build something new. together. And the last trap is the framing trap, the one when our choice is influenced by how we frame a problem as a first step to make a decision. And here I'd like to cite what Albert Einstein once said: you cannot solve a problem with the same elements that created it. So whenever we hear people talking about let's do early elections with the same law and the same government, this is going to produce exactly the same results. But we'll get to that in our discussion. Last slide, to have the next steps that I'm going to share with you. For these next steps to be possible, we have two preconditions according to Lihaqi. One, an independent techno-government. It's a punctual government whose role would be to organize the elections and to create the law for these elections, and an independent observation body. These two are absolute conditions for us to see a change. Bearing in mind that these preconditions are there, the next steps, the way we see them, is one, to target 2022 elections with 20% of the votes. We had 6% in 2018, but then August 4th happened, October 17th happened. The sympathy has grown a lot and the establishment are losing their ground. So we should build on that momentum. We should leverage that momentum. We need to start working on finalizing common values and purpose. And I'm talking outside of Lebanon, the expats or the diaspora. There is a need to start working on building common values and purpose next quarter, if it's not ready. There's a need to start projecting teams for strategy, structure, connection, and action. It's time to start organizing ourselves and have groups that would be dedicated to each one of these pillars for the election. Have pilot tests for simulation and correction by Q4 2021. Of course, this is my proposal. It only represents my personal opinion. And last but not least, have a deployment plan ready by Q1 2022. And then take corrective measures, fine-tune that plan to be ready. That was it from our side, from my side. Thank you for listening to me. And now, if you have any questions.
Okay, I see there's Remy. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks, Carl, for this nice presentation. My question is, from the experience of the previous elections, the fact that there was 2 independent lists in Alay, مثلا, one confused the voters and maybe scared them away, and second, ended up splitting the votes وما حدا ربح from the independent groups. As far as I know, maybe I'm mistaken. But
no, you're totally wrong. You're totally right, sorry. You're totally that was totally wrong, yes.
So this shows that for the next elections, there is a dire need to create this unified front or alliance against the traditional parties. So the elections is about a year from now, and we haven't realized this yet, the unified independent front. So in your opinion, how can this be achieved? Who are the key players al-Arad? And do we still have time for that?
Thank you for the question, and sorry for the Freudian slip. Having 2 lists was totally wrong, but it was perfectly normal, and we will get that again. Because we're in a democracy and we cannot pretend to represent everyone, this will happen again, and it can happen in a passive way, it can happen in an aggressive way. The way it happened 2 years ago was a passive way. We had 2 lists that practically merged and then didn't merge for a specific reason. We can go through that if people would like to know more. But we also need to expect the establishment to create decoy lists facing us to split the votes. And as ready as we can be. We need to know that in such a battle, they will use every weapon they have, and this is one weapon they will definitely use in 2022. Now, we have started to align with other groups. We signed an agreement end of August 2020. You will find this agreement on the Lihaqi website with different organizations. The idea is to group the number of signing organization in this agreement and ideally transform this platform into an electoral alliance. So we're working on that. 2018, we were one group that found itself in a platform last 3 months. Today, we're 6 groups, hoping to increase that and aiming at building a common strategy for the next year. Yes, we only have a year left. This is why it's extremely important that we start putting in place a plan to build the strategy going from the common values. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
I think Carl كمان the next elections is also extremely important لأنه هي اللي حتفرز أو اللي حتصوت لرئيس جمهورية جديد.
100%.
يعني
on time.
أكيد هلا إيه بس regardless حتى إذا if it is or isn't at one point في مجلس نيابي جديد بده ينتخب رئيس جمهورية جديد. At one point هلا أكيد في الإف ووات إف وإذا صار في انتخابات وكل هالأمور بس إنه we have to act as if إنه جاي الانتخابات. و I think there's enough international pressure على the current establishment لا يعملوا انتخابات صح؟
أكيد 100%. We have to be ready. Even if the elections happen with the current law, even if the election happens with a similar government, we do not have the right to stand aside. We have to participate no matter what are the results, and we have to be ready for that. Ideally, we would have a technical government, we would have a new law, we would have an independent body so that our chances are optimized, but we have to be ready to participate no matter what are the conditions. But we do not necessarily want the elections to happen before time, because يعني وقت بيحكوا عن انتخابات مبكرة يعني هيدي الوزارة هي الحكومة اللي رح تعمل انتخابات. It's the legend of the Ouroboros, you know, the snake that eats its tail. So it's the same vicious circle. Still, we have to be ready by all means.
Do you think we can we play a role as diaspora to put pressure on governments, obviously برات Lebanon, to put pressure on the Lebanese establishment to have elections?
You have a tremendous role. Tremendous role. You have an amazing lobbying role. You have an influence role that you can play with the media and the governments of the countries you're living in. You can put pressure on the embassies or whatever is remaining from those embassies in the countries you're living in. There is an amazing maneuvering margin economically, with economical powers, with you have lots of partnership between Canadians and Arab countries, between Franco-Lebanese organizations. My recommendation would be to list all the influencers in your respective countries and consider them as targets for your lobbying and for your influence campaign. Of course you have a role.
Okay.
In fact, I think the Thawra should happen also in your countries, not only in support of the Thawra and protesting against the embassies, but an active Thawra to make sure that our voice is heard everywhere.
Perfect. وهذا المطمح له. فؤاد يحيى, go ahead.
هاي كيفك كارل؟
هاي فؤاد، كيفك؟
مش الحال. أول شيء بخصوص الدياسبورا، في كتير ناس عندهم أمل يعني بيطلعوا بهذا الشيء وعندهم أمل بالمغتربين، بس المغتربين محمسين يساعدوا. هلا الجروب اللي عم بشتغل معهم اللي حقي هون انه بيشتغلوا قد 50 واحد، بس اذا عم نحكي على صعيد المغتربين ككل، نمط الحياة برا مش مثل لبنان. يعني الناس ما كتير يعني حابة تساعد، بس ما عندها الاندفاع انه تساعد وما عندها الإدارة. فعادة إذا بدهم الناس من لبنان تدفشهم للطريق اللي لازم يشتغلوا عليه، أو دائما يكون في محفز من الناس من لبنان ليقدروا هن يساعدوا أو يشتغلوا. هيدا أنا تجربتي مع بكذا محل، يعني بأمريكا كمان من 4 سنين عم بحاول يعني أتواصل مع ناس وهيك. إذا ما في لبنانية دائما عم بتلاحق المجموعات اللي بأمريكا، لأنه نمط الحياة هون غير لبنان. صعب يعني يعملوا اشياء نحن متوقعين منهم. هيدي أول شغلة. بعرف رأيك بهالموضوع. ثاني شيء بخصوص الانتخاب، بخصوص مشاركة الناس اللي حكيت عنها بالبرزنتيشن، كنت عم بشوف إذا بيكون في مثل بلاتفورم مشتركة لكل الثوار اللي بلبنان برات لبنان كويب سايت، الناس تصير تشارك فيه. اكيد يعني بده يكون هو موضوع تاني يعني، بس انه قديش هو مفيد يعني. ممكن ليكون هذا نعرف قديش نحن عنا ثوار حقيقيين وقديش مستعدين يساعدوا. وثالث شيء بخصوص الانتخابات علي، ما بعرف اللائحة الثانية شو يعني. كنت عم تقول عندك معلومات كمان عن شو سبب اللائحتين، إذا فينا نحكي عنها. That's it.
Thank you فؤاد. رح خلي قصة لائحتين للآخر لأنه شوي سيرة طويلة. رح بلش بالأول بفكرة الكومن بلاتفورم. It's a great idea. Thank you. بعرف إنه في ambitions وبروجكت إنه ينشغل يعني مثل الثورة تي في، مثل الجروب اللي عم بيستضيفنا اليوم. These are all common platforms، بس يمكن من هالcommon platforms ضروري نوصل ل1 ميجا بلاتفورم اللي هي بتكون عالم أنا ما بحب سميها ثورجية لأنه نحن عم نتحرر من الاستابليشمنت. فذاتس a very good idea. بالنسبة للسؤال الأول إنه يكون في ناس من لبنان، أنا بالأول بدي أشكر كل اللي موجودين معنا اليوم وكل الإكسباتس اللي عم بيجربوا يلعبوا دور active role in their countries، لأنه these are people who started another future, started a new life, and they have to enlist in their new countries, in their new societies, and still they are exerting efforts and time and energy to work on Lebanon. And this is amazing. And I think any Lebanese would tell you, we don't know how much we should thank you for that. I know that part of you would like to come back one day, and I know that the other part doesn't want to come back, but they just want to right the wrongs and make things right in Lebanon. And this makes it even more amazing that you are contributing as much. When it comes to لحقي رح احكيها بالعربي وبعدين رح ترجمها بالانجليزي. لحقي هو تنظيم قاعدي لا مركزي تشاركي وديمقراطي. يعني in English it's like a holocracy. يعني it's a grassroots movement where each one contributes as much as he has time, and there are no leaders. يعني ما في حدا بيشجع حدا تاني. Free minds التقوا مع بعض وقرروا يشتغلوا سوا، وبعدين قرروا يحطوا structure، بعدين قرروا governance ويعملوا elections with the objective of building مجتمع علماني ديمقراطي ومنحاز للناس. As much as it is important to have a link with Lebanon أكيد، بس مثلا بلحقي في عنا جذر أوروبا وجذر أمريكا اللي في عالم self starters. I can hear you when you ask us, no, guys, we need input from Lebanon to work لأنه we have our life, we have our jobs وما عنا وقت هالقد. And definitely there is a need to strengthen that link, but there is also the need to have people who are ready to contribute as much as you are. And this is where we talk of qualitative contribution. It's the quality of the contribution, then the quantity of the people. We can help each other, but we need to have you as well taking initiatives, giving ideas, self-starting, لأنه نحن فينا نستفيد منكم كمان. يعني نحن ما بدنا العلاقة تكون من لبنان لبرا، بدنا إياها تكون two ways. بالنسبة لآخر سؤال اللي هو شو صار بعلي، very simply الجروب اللي هلأ صار لحقي عمل vetting process، اختار عالم وبلشوا يشتغلوا هالعالم سوا، فصار في kind of commitment to each other. وكان في مراكز شاغرة، يعني نحن كان عندنا مراكز شاغرة كان فينا نزيد لائحة تانية. واللائحة التانية كانت موجودة، بس اللائحة التانية حطت شرط إنه شخص من اللائحة تبعنا ما يكون بالإلكشن. irrespective of the fact اللي كان هالشخص مين بده اياه مين ما بده اياه، كان already مع الليسته معنا، مع اللائحه معنا. they asked us to drop one of our candidates to add their list, to be with their list, whereas we didn't need to do that. So we could have perfectly added both lists and have a common one.
Thank you.
حتى مدينا معهم as in okay كل العالم بيفوتوا، رجعوا تاني يوم لا هيدا الشخص اكس ما بدنا اياه. ليه يا خيي ما بدك اياه؟ انا مش عم بيجي بقول لك ما بدي عندك A او B او C، وفي محل للكل، فينا نجتمع سوا ونعمل لائحه وحده ما قبلوا فيها. and we had to stay true to our commitment to our lists and we parted ways.
Thank you, كارل. على فكرة عرفتني ولا لا؟ ها؟
أكيد عرفتك.
يلا مشتاقين بنشوفك إن شاء الله.
نحن بالأكثر. وين صرت؟
لا راجع
رجع إن شاء الله. إن شاء الله.
بلشوا رشوا على الحيطان، فؤاد راجع.
نسأل
question. Hind, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the raise hand feature on my. So you talked about a very important point, the challenges that diaspora, we have to focus on the challenges that diaspora faces to be able to mobilize towards the election. And I'm gonna start with one major challenge. People were very enthused to participate in the elections in 2018 and cast their vote because it was the first time ever expats were allowed to exercise that right. So, however, logistically, it was where they go to vote, it was like distance apart from where they're living. And so they have to lose a day of work or what's not going back and forth to cast their vote. But this is one of the challenges that we faced in 2018, although like the poll said that there is going to be a nice number of turnouts, but it didn't translate into that the day of the election. And mainly people hesitated because of the driving distance. Canada and the United States faced that challenge at large. Zahi can talk to that at length, maybe. The other challenge is the fact that the names were not accurate on the على لوائح الشطب بس إجوا. There were names that the day of the election they were not eligible to vote for some reason. And so we have those challenges that we have to really look into when we are preparing to the coming election, and to iron all these wrinkles to make it a successful turnout. So if you can talk to that, please.
Thank you, Hind. These are two very important points. And in fact, being a consultant or an operational consultant myself, I almost would like to propose to do a task force today about that. My first answer is online voting. We should be able together to do a campaign to get our wonderful Lebanese embassies prepare for online voting. And this is something that we should start as of today. And I think I would like to make a call here for all the people who are on this group. What about organizing a task force that would have this as an objective, getting online voting? It could start with working on a small strategic plan, identifying the key people to talk to, the means to get to those people, and what we will do to communicate the need for online to ultimately get the government or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to accept online voting. When it comes to the names not being correct on the lists, I'm afraid this is not something that we can actually grasp. It's not something it's not something that we can work on a common as a group level, because we can say that yes, we want the names to be correct, but we can get lots of surprises, lots of 25th hour surprises. So the solution that could happen for that is to actually ask for your voting card a month earlier, not a day earlier, but get a voting card with enough time for you to correct it in case there's a problem. So these are two things we can put pressure with on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I think online is a real battle worth fighting. I think, and I would like to ask the people who are in this group, whomever feels they would like to work on this task force to build a strategic plan, a communication plan, and actually taking the steps needed to reach the stage where we have online voting in 2022. We need to work on it.
Whoever is interested can message me. I just need their email and a good contact, and we'll get that ball rolling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are ready to work immediately. We are ready to roll. Yep. So please
absolutely.
do it.
And I'll make sure I'll share that with my friends in Lihaqi to push the other organizations who signed the August 30 agreement to push in the same direction. So yes, let's put our hands together and start on a task force for that. That's extremely important.
Yep, and I know that I know just على كلامك, I know other groups are working towards that same goal, like مثلا مغتربين مجتمعين, towards having such a task force to تودي لنتيجة تهين علينا كدايسبورا نصوت وبكل شفافية تكون يعني.
أكيد. في كتير منظمات أو حركات عم تشتغل, بس بعدنا كلنا بالconceptual. it's time to take action. يعني اليوم إذا ماني غلطان في معنى دوري في صحح لي, بس إذا ماني غلطان بال 2018 بين 45 ل 50% من العالم ما صوتوا. إذا بنحسب عدد الناس اللي بيصوتوا بالاغتراب في عنا عدد كتير كبير في يعمل بالانس لهال 40% اللي ما صوتوا.
صح. نحن كانت مشكلتنا هو التسجيل للانتخابات. في عالم سجلت ما اجوا اساميهم.
مزبوط. مشان هيك لازم نعملها قبل بوقت، ولازم نتاكد انه العالم حاضرين قبل بوقت. And we go ahead with that. Noura, thank you, Noura Abu Shaqra, is saying we can also start raising awareness on the power of voting. Absolutely, Noura, absolutely. This is crucial because many people we met during the elections in 2018 were telling us, my vote will not make a difference. Or I will protest with a white bulletin. No, guys, a white bulletin is not a vote. A white bulletin is the best way to help the establishment. A vote, whether you vote for the establishment or against the establishment, at least you're taking an active part in the political life. This is not only your right, it's also your duty. It is your duty to do that. And yes, an awareness campaign about voting is important, but I think at this stage, we have the right climate to start working on that.
Good statement, Noura. Rania, go ahead, and thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl, for the beautiful presentation. Thank you, لحقي مختبرين مستمعين أوهايو. Carl, I have a question مش بس regarding كيف نحن ننتخب للدائرة تبعنا بلبنان. Where do we stand as a diaspora على نواب الاغتراب? We have heard that we have 6. ما بعرف if this is true or not. I heard it through the grapevine. Do we have نواب اغتراب already established or already is going to be in place? Thank you.
Well, you know, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm sure the establishment shared the intentions to have Nuwab al-Ikhtirab. I personally haven't seen any concrete action on the ground to have that in 2022. I personally believe that 6 is too low. أنا إذا بتسأليني رأيي, and this represents my personal opinion, المغترب actually claim to 15 or 18% of the parliament. That's personal view. Of course, it doesn't represent لحقي. But this is another major battle to fight, اللي هو to make it concrete, نواب الاغتراب to become a concrete part of the political life of Lebanese. And when I say Lebanese, I'm not talking Lebanon. I'm talking Lebanese in Lebanon and outside of Lebanon. Lebanese in Madrid, in Paris, in Washington, everywhere should be represented in the parliament, because this is the only thing. We always say that the diaspora is the main wealth that we have. Then if we're that adamant on this wealth, then let's build more bridges with this wealth. Let's make these resources, let's make their voices heard in a much stronger way than just 6 members of the parliament. Definitely.
Thank you.
George has a...
Zahi, you're muted.
Oh, George, can I go ahead? Sorry. You can.
Thank you, Zahi. Thank you. أول شيء thank you على اللقاء الحلو. Thank you كارل على البرزنتيشن. يعطيك ألف عافية أنت والجروب اللي معكم. بحب أسأل سؤال صغير راح أرجع أعقب عليه. اضطريت فوت مؤخر. أنا من الناس اللي بعتقد إنه المشكلة هي الميليشيا، تحالف الميليشيا وتحالف الفاسدين. بعتقد اللي كنت عم تحكيه انت، انا فت مؤخر مثل ما كنت عم اقول، كنت عم تحكي كثير عن الفساد وعن طريقه الشغل اللي عم بيصير، بس ما حكيت شيء عن الميليشيا الا اذا انا I missed. Did I?
No, you didn't. سوري فكرتك خلصت. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
لا ما حكيت عن الميليشيا. شغله واحده قلتها انه الالينس اوف ذا مافيا اند ذا ميليشيا which is something that I mentioned. وهيدي الجمله منها جايه مني، جايه من السفيره الامريكانيه بلبنان.
نعم.
Lebanon is mafia and militia او the Lebanese political system. نحن اليوم عم نحكي عن الانتخابات 2018 وهدفنا نحكي بعدين عن الانتخابات 2022، واكيد الميليشيا هي جزء كثير مهم من هالموضوع. نحن عندنا we have a very clear position. الدستور بيقول انه ما في غير الجيش اللبناني اللي لازم يحمل سلاح. صار وقت انه كل الفئات المسلحه ترجع تنضوي تحت جناح الجيش وبأمرة الدوله اللبنانيه لا غير. هيدا الوضع كثير واضح على الويب سايت تبع لحقي، وهيدا الشيء لطالما حكينا فيه ان كان بالانتخابات او بعد الانتخابات. وهون حابب ضوي على نقطه ثانيه، انه هل الظاهره اللي الناس بيسموها ميليشيا، ناس بيسموها ظاهره، ناس بيسموها مقاومه، بس هالظاهره بتمثل فئه مهمه من الشعب اللبناني، وعلى فتره يمكن كانت تعبر عن هالفئه وتساعد هالفئه توصل على اهدافها. بس اليوم هالظاهره صارت عم تعزل هالفئه عن بقيه المجتمع. يعني وقتها فئه معينه عم بتحس حالها بجهه وبقيه المجتمع بجهه ثانيه، هيدا الشيء مش مقبول ومش مش مفروض يكمل. بس هيدي الفئه وهيدي الظاهره هي جزء من الشعب اللبناني، فنحن بدنا اياها ترجع تنضوي، ترجع تفوت على الدوله اللبنانيه وتفوت على الجيش اللبناني، لانه ممنوع انه يكون في سلاح على الارض اللبناني غير سلاح الجيش اللبناني.
كتير منيح. بنطلق من اللي حضرتك قلته لأعطي رأيي أو سؤال بموضوع تاني، اللي هو في كتير organization وكتير كمان كتير منيح إنه بلش يصير في شوية تواصل بين organizations وبين الجمعيات بلبنان. بس مثل ما أنت سبقت وقلت ومعروف، يعني عم نحارب احزاب او عم نحارب سيستم، وناس صار لها سنين قاعده بهالمواقع وعندها ناس بتأيدها. فبقى لازم بعتقد انه اهون شيء نهون الامور، إن بدل ما نضل معليين السقف وكل اورجانيزيشن. ما عم بحكي عنكم لانك انت كثير بينت انه عندكم انفتاح وعندكم استعداد لتتحاوروا، انه الكل ينزلوا اجريهم على الارض شوي ويشوفوا شو اهم، يحطوا باهم شيء قدامهم. يعني قبل ما بدنا نرجع لبنان جنة، على القليل نخليه واقف على اجريه. انه اذا ما اتحد كل المجتمع المدني او كل الناشطين على الارض اللي هن برات المنظومه بالوقت الحاضر، ما بعتقد رح يقدروا يرجعوا، خصوصا بظل القانون الانتخابي اليوم الموجود، ما رح يقدروا يزيحوا انملي اذا كانوا متحدين. كيف اذا كانوا مش متحدين؟ يعني بالنهايه بدهم شوي الكل يتنازل، بدل ما مثل ما سبق وقلت كان في اختلاف على اسم حط هي او ما تحط هذا، كانه وصلت اللائحه بدها تحصد 3/4 المرشحين، وبنختلف. مش عم بحكي بس عنكم واللي حضرتك قلته، بس انه بالاجمال شو سمعنا وكيف عم نتابع بغير محلات، انه يوطوا السقف ويجربوا على القليله يوصلوا اكثر عدد ممكن من الناس المستقلين تقدر تغير. واكيد بدها تتعاون مع الناس اللي نضاف. ما فينا نقول كل العالم وكل الاحزاب، لانه بالنهايه في ناس ما تلوثت ايديها وبتقدر تفيد ما تضر. وقت بلشت الثوره، بس تكي بدي بعد اعمل نقطه صغيره بالاذن. وقت بلشت الثوره بسنه الماضي ب 17 تشرين، بلشت الثورة وما كانت عم تحكي عن الميليشيا. الميليشيا عرفت حالها إنه هي بالنهاية بتكون مستهدفة، وهي المتضررة الكبرى، وهي اللي فتحت النار على الثورة. الثورة لازم تعرف، وكل الناس بالثورة، إنه بالنهاية بدهم يشوفوا طريقة كيف بدهم يعالجوا موضوع الميليشيا. مش بس يكون عندهم رأي، بدهم يعالجوه مثل ما بدهم يعالجوا كل المواضيع الباقية اللي هي المافيا.
على الاكيد، على الاكيد. جورج، في بالبرزنتيشن يمكن ثالث سلايد او رابع سلايد، انت حضرتك حكيت عن الانفتاح اللي عندنا اياه. نحن we're not only open, we're also inclusive. ونحن بدنا نتحاور مع الكل. هدفنا مش بس نقنع بقيه فئات المجتمع المدني انه يمشوا معنا، هدفنا انه يحسوا هالاحزاب اللي لهم 50 و60 سنه بالدوله بلبنان، واللي هن لهم جمهورهم، يحسوا انه ممارستهم للسياسه لازم تتغير. يحسوا انه صار وقت يعطوا شوي لهالصوت اللي عم بيمثلهم، مش بس يخطفوه. يحسوا انه لازم يخلوا الشباب بهالاحزاب كمان ياخذوا دورهم. يعني بكل الاحزاب في ناس فيها خير وبركه، وفيها ناس يمكن منهم احسن نموذج من المواطن، بس كل الاحزاب فينا نتحاور معها. بس بدنا هالاحزاب تغير ممارستها للسياسه. يعني اليوم نحن ايدنا مفتوحه للكل، ونحن بنعتبر انه هدفنا نكون المثل الصالح او المثل الايجابي لنساعد كل الاحزاب يعملوا هالثوره الداخليه تبعها ويرجعوا يتجددوا، لانه ما بقى فيهم يكملوا مثل ما هن هلا مكملين. انه الميليشيا هي اللي تهجمت على الثوار، بس مع الميليشيا كان في كل المنظومه او كل الناس اللي عم بيستفيدوا من النظام الحالي اللي كانوا عم بيصلوا تتفرط هالثوره. كلهم مصلحتهم الثوره، لانه هن عايشين على هواجس الشعب. يشغلونا كل واحد من جهته، كل واحد بقلعته، وكل واحد بطيفته وبشارعه، كلما هن مسيطرين. وقت بتجي انت بتقول لهم لا انا بدي احكي، بدي خلي ابن عكار يتحد مع ابن الجنوب، مع ابن بقاع وابن بعبده، هيدي بتخوفهم، لانه ما بقى عندهم شيء يشتغلوا على اساسه. بس هن اذا بتفوت تشوف الاحزاب اللبنانيه كلهم عندهم كثير حلوه ومبادئ كثير حلوه اللي هن بتتناول الوطنيه والمواطنه، فمش عم بيمارسوها. نحن حابين نمارس افكارنا، يعني مش بس we want to walk the talk. ما بدنا بس نحكي ونرجع بعدين نتقوقع بطائفه او بشارع او بمبدا معين. نحن هدفنا حياه سياسيه ديمقراطيه صحيه بلبنان، بوجود الاحزاب، بوجود كل الشوارع، بوجود كل فئات المجتمع بطريقه تشاركيه. ما بدنا نلغي حدا، بدنا نوعي وبدنا نحرر. ويمكن نحن فينا نحرر هالاحزاب من الفخ اللي وقعوا فيه واللي مش عم يقدروا يطلعوا منه. بتأمل انه يكون جاوبتك.
لا كثير منيح، ثانك يو، يعطيك العافيه. مش مختلف معك على ثاني شق من اللي قلته هلا، انه عن مشاكل الاحزاب وشو في عندهم جوا. هذا شيء مسلم به، يعني خلص معروف انه عندهم مشاكل كلهم، وكلهم عندهم تبعيه، اكثريتهم احسن ما اكون عم بجمل الكل. بس انا كنت حبيت بس اني صوب انه وين المشكله الاكبر اليوم بلبنان. بعتقد وقت بنقدر نعرف انه المشكله الكبيره هي الميليشيا، لانه المافيا هينه انك ترجع مش هينه، اهون انك تحاربها وتقدر تغير النمط الماشي. بس يعطيكم الف عافيه، ثانك يو.
لسوء الحظ معلقينا بمعضله صعبه، لانه المافيا والميليشيا والمنظومه كلهم شابكين ايدين بين بعض، ونحن بهالسجن الكبير.
ما في شك، يعطيكم العافيه.
الله يعافيك.
Thank you George. Thank you Carl. كان في سؤال من شربل. شربل بدك تسأله ولا I'll read it؟ أنا بعتقد الشق الأول تجاوب عليه. في how can you will do for having a common program next elections.
اوكي. اليوم في بروجرام صار محطوط على الويب سايت تبع لحقي وعلى ويب سايت المنظمات اللي مدعمة مع لحقي، وبنتامل انه العدد يزيد. هالبروجرام نحن بحقي واقعيين وبنشتغل يعني بطريقه براغماتيكيه. فهالبروجرام في عنده المدى القصير والمدى الطويل. اتس فول بروجرام وماضيينه مع غير منظمات، وهدفنا انه نروج له باقوى طريقه ممكنه نجتمع بغير منظمات، ويصير هالبروجرام هو قاعده لبرنامج موحد، قبل ما جزء من هالبرنامج الموحد يكون برنامج انتخابي موحد. بس نحن مش بس عم نشتغل على الانتخابات النيابيه، عم نشتغل على انتخابات الجامعات، على انتخابات الاتحادات. بنعتبر انه انتصار ملحم زين بانتخابات المحامين كان انتصار كمان لنا، وبنتمنى انه
ملحم خلف بعتقد.
سوري؟
ملحم خلف.
شو قلت انا؟
ملحم زين.
سوري ملحم خلف.
It's time for a party.
ملحم خلف، انتصار ملحم خلف بيمثلنا، انتصار بالانتخابات الجامعات بيمثلنا كان كارثه على المنظومه السياسيه، كارثه يعني نسحق وسحق والخير لقدام. فنحن البرنامج تبعنا مش بس برنامج انتخابي، برنامج للحياه السياسيه على المدى الطويل، في مراحل على المدى القصير بيناتهم الانتخابات.
وموجود البروجرام على الويب سايت؟
صح.
اوكي شربل يو كان
الورقه اللي مديناها
صح؟
الورقه اللي مديناها سوا صح.
بيرفكت. اوكي في ليما كنت رافعه ايدك. جو هاد.
هاي من جديد للكل. أنا بدي أتشكرك صراحة، كتير حلوة كانت البرزنتيشن، واللي بيفرح القلب إنه هالقد صرنا قراب لبعضنا كلنا تقريبا كمغتربين. لا بشوف إنه نحن يمكن المغتربين بلشنا بموضوع الحملة الانتخابية، ما رح أقول بكير لأنه بعتقد نحن فتنا بموضوع الانتخابات بعد سنة، لأن هيدا إذا فعلا عطونا إياها بوقتها، لأنه حتكون الانتخابات حسب ما بعرف برمضان، وأكيد حيأجلوها. ما بعرف إذا حيعملوها قبل رمضان بس ما بعتقد. وهون كمان نحن ما نوقع موضوع مشكلة معهم إذا بدهم يأجلوها أو بدهم يمددوا لحالهم، واللي بهيدي السنة حيكون عندنا انتخابات بلديات وانتخابات رئاسية، يعني 3 انتخابات مع بعض. ما بعرف هني شو حيطلع أفكار براسهم إنه لحتى يبعدوا موضوع المجلس النيابي أول شيء بعتقد. بس اللي بعرفه إنه نحن مفروض نبلش كتير نعمل ماركتينج لحالنا ونوسع الدائرة تبع الداتابيس تعولنا بالاغتراب. في ناس كانوا أول الثورة كتير محمسين، بحس اختفوا مش لأنه بطل عندهم أمل، يمكن لازم بس نخبرهم وين صرنا بالتنظيم ورجعوا انضموا لنا لحتى تفوتوا بالمرحلة التنظيمية للانتخابات اللي هي المعركة الأساسية مع هيدي الثورة. لأن أنا كنت مع هيدي السلطة أنا بالنسبة لي أبدا ما بآمن فيها ولا واحد منهم، مش بس كلهم، يعني كلهم، يعني بل أي حدا تابع لهم. ما عندي أمل ولا منتظرة منا للسلطة شيء، لا الميليشيا ولا هيدوك اللي عاملين الشركة القابضة الرأسمالية اللي حاكمين البلد. وفعلا ميليشيا حاكمة هيدا البلد، والميليشيا الأكثر الشعب اللي تابع لهم بطريقة بلطجية. أنا اللي عندي أمل فيه بس وعي الشعب، ولأنه دائما بآمن بمقولة إنه الأوطان ما بتنبنى غير بالشعوب. أكيد الشعوب الواعية والحضارية واللي بتطمح لوطن سيادة، مش كل واحد يكون تابع لبرا لأنه هن عودون هيك. بعتقد الشيء الوحيد اللي ممكن نحن نكسب ثقة الشعب اللي هو ما نزل على الشارع أو اللي هلأ ما طلع من أحزابه أن يشوفونا فعلا نحن منظمين. لأنه مهما صار موضوع بالبوليتكس أكيد اللي بيربحوا المنظم أكتر مش القوى الأقوى، لأنه هن معهم القوة، بس نحن مفروض يكون معنا التنظيم. وقت نصير منظمين أكتر، في عالم كتير نزلت الثورة وبسمعهم بيقولوا لي إنه ما شفنا شيء بديل. حيجي وقت البديل، حننزله نحن بالانتخابات وعلى كل المناطق حيكون. واكيد التحالف بين كل القوى ونكون عم نلعبها فعلا مثل السلطه ذكيه، حيكون هيدي الكيز لنا وقت يكون عندنا مندوبين عالم عم تعمل تمثيل لنا على يعني على الشارع او بين البيوت او بين يعني اي طريقه نحن لنوصل للعالم. هيدي الطريقه الوحيده انا بحس حنجذب العالم، خاصه اللي عايش بلبنان، لانه اللبناني اللي عايش بلبنان بيختلف نهائيا عن طريقه نحن اللي عايشين برا لبنان بتفكيره بنمط حياته وبمقولته انه انا ما في يعيش بلا حدا زعيم مسؤول او حدا يعني اسند حالي عليه اذا بدي اتوظف فوت الجامعه، وهيدا الشيء كثير غلط. نحن وقت نبلش هيدا سوري كيف بدي احكيها، بس الحملة الانتخابية يعني تبلش مفروض كمان نعلي الصوت خاصة على لبنان، لأن أنا بجروبات الأرض ما بشوف هلأ حديث انتخابات، بعضهم عم يحكوا كيف ما نجمع حالنا وننزل نسقط هيدا النظام مع بعض، وهيدا الشيء أنا ما شايفته حيصير. يعني بعضهم عندهم أمل الثورة حترجع وحنهب وننزل السلطة، أنا ما شايفة غير طريق واحد هو الانتخابات. وميرسي لك كثير كارل، كثير كان شيء حلو اللي حكيته.
Thank you ليما.
ما في شك الطريقة الديمقراطية الوحيدة هي الانتخابات. هلا نحن اللي صار ب 17 of أكتوبر كانت ردة فعل، وبعدين صارت state position stand، وهلا يعني بالاتفاق اللي عملناه في حدا جاوب، في حدا سأل من بقية الجماعات ماضيين الاتفاق، كله موجود على الويب سايت. في مجموعات جديده يمكن مش سامعين فيها بالاختراق بس that are worth knowing. لقينا حالنا مجتمعين على برنامج مشترك، بل رحنا ابعد من هيك، قلنا انه هيدا النظام ساقط وهالسلطه ساقطه، ونحن ما بقى نعترف بمجلس نواب، ما بقى نعترف بالحكومه اللي موجوده، وهالدوله ما فيها بقى تلاقي الحل، لانه ما فينا نجي نطلب من الجلاد هو يطبب الشخص اللي كان عم يجلده. فبالنسبه لنا اخذنا موقع كثير متقدم، انه نحن هيدي السلطه وهيدي المنظومه كلها نعتبرها ساقطه، ولبل لازم نبلش نشتغل على الحل، ولازم نبلش نشتغل على الالترناتيف. هلا بالنسبه للعالم او كيف فينا نخلي العالم يحتشدوا، بال 2018 نزلنا على الانتخابات ما كان عندنا اي تواصل مع اي تنظيم برات لبنان. بال 2020 صار في عندنا ناس، وبشكرهم هند وساهي والناس اللي معهم، صار في عندنا ناس عم بينظموا كل جمعه ويبينار مع حدا تيصير فيها التواصل. والخير لقدام. في بالماركتينج دائما وقتها بيقولوا انه واحد منزل انوفيشن، في شيء اسمه البايونيرز وبعدين ايرلي ادوبترز. البايونيرز هن اول ناس ببلشوا يعرضوا هالشيء جديد، ونحن اليوم نحن وياكم البايونيرز. اول ما نوصل للايرلي ادوبترز المسبحه رح تكر. فمهم انه نبلش نحن نتجمع من ال 15 اللي نحن موجودين، بكره نصير 50 وبعدين 100 وبعدين 150، وشوفي كيف المسبحه رح تكر. الهدف انه يشوفوا عالم انه في محل ما في ناس متحررين مجتمعين بهدف معين، وعندهم القدره وعندهم الحماس انه يوصلوا لهالهدف، وشوفي كيف العالم رح يجوا معنا. بس ما في شك انه لازم كمان نعمل ستراكشر، ولازم كمان نعمل كوميونيكيشن، ولازم نعمل كونفرجن.
تمام. Awesome. Any further questions?
I think Remy has a question in the chat or in the Q&A.
She mentioned who are the 5 organizations.
اوكي، في عنا هاي ماري روز. كيفك ماري روز؟ حطت اللينك بالنسبه للمجموعات اللي موديول برنامج الموحد. and we urge you please to go on that link, read that program, advocate that program, talk about it. لأنه هيدا البرنامج اللي كان القاسم المشترك بين هالست مجموعات، وانطلاقا من هيدا البرنامج رح نبلش نبني البلاتفورمز، نبلش ناخذ actions على الأرض، measurable actions on the ground.
The 5 organizations, Carl, please, the question about the 5 organizations that are collaborating with Lihaqi or associated with Lihaqi on that program.
It was Mary Rose Rahmi, who's from Lihaqi. Hello, Mary Rose, just answered it. And
okay.
So you can see everything about that, that agreement. لأنه some of the organizations are not known yet outside of Lebanon. Some of them are new. And the ambition is to enlist other organizations because we want to be as inclusive as possible. And I can tell you that there were talks with other organizations to join that agreement. We need to promote this agreement as much as possible. Yani, we started 5, the ambition is to become 100 or 150 and have as many organizations under this umbrella.
Inshallah. Elias Kanaan, go ahead.
مساء الخير ويعطيك العافية كارل، ميرسي على اللي عم بتعملوه واللي هلا عملت لنا اياه. انا تعليقي اللي هو اكثر من سؤال، يمكن هو تعليق او استفسار مقسوم لقسمين. يمكن كمان انحكى شوي من خلال كذا شخص تقريبا الشيء اللي بدي اقوله، ولكن انا بدي اول نقطة احكي فيها هي انه عم بينحكى بكل المواجهات والتغيير وكأنه بس عم نواجه عقلية سياسية واجتماعية عادية لنغيرها. وبقصد بعادية إنه عقلية مثلا غلط، بالية ورجعية، أو إنه مجموعة مش عاجبها شو عم تعمل مجموعة تانية وعم ينحكى إنه بدنا نغيرها وهي غلط وبس. وناسيين دايما إنه عم نواجه منظومة مترابطة لو ظاهريا بتبين إنه هي ضد بعضها، ولكن بيجمعها بطريقة أو بأخرى للأسف سلاح قليل ينجاب سيرته أو بينجاب سيرته مرور الكرام وتحصيل حاصل. ومش كأنه هو العقدة الكبيرة يلي عاملة كل هالمشاكل اليوم بالبلد. حزب الله قوة سلاح خارج الدولة حامية هالمنظومة كلها بسلاحه، وذلك الكل حتى الناس اللي اليوم عم تنزل على الأرض تعترض أو تعمل نوع من ثورة، وتما أقول عم بخوف بلكي ذلك الكل. انتم كمجموعة لحقي كيف مفكرين تواجهوا هذه المنظومة وسلاحها؟ شو البلان اللي حاطينه؟ مثل ما عاملين بلان كيف بدكم تواجهوا الفساد الاقتصادي. والنقطة الثانية اللي كمان بحب احكي فيها، للأسف من كذا مرة عم بتابع بكل المطارح على التلفزيونات أو على وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي بعض المجموعات الجديدة، وما بحب أقول الأشياء مثل ما عم تتسمى اليوم، سوري راحت مني الكلمة، المجموعات المدنية، لأنه بلشت تتعاطى بالسياسي. سو المجموعات الجديدة عم تستعمل ذات اللغة يلي كانوا يستعملوها أغلبية الأحزاب اللي هي من الماضي، بعدهم بيستعملوها لليوم بس هذه الأحزاب. بس للأسف عم لاحظ إنه بعض المجموعات الجديدة عم تستعملها، ويلي هي لغة الأنا أو النحن والهني، وبطريقة سلبية عم تستعمل. وهذا الشيء بيبعد كتار عن هالمجموعات الجديدة، خصوصي إنه عم تستعمل بطريقة شوي شمولية لدرجة إنه عم بينفتح أبواب ماضي كتير عتيقة ليواجهوا بعض الأحزاب القديمة بس ليقولوا إنه شفتوا إنه هن كمان عندهم غلط لازم نواجههم، ومن دون ما ينعطى قبيلة حلول. وأنا شخصياً برأيي لما بينحط اتيكاتات مسبقة على الآخر، لو ببعض الأوقات هاي الاتيكات اللي بتنحط عليه هي صحيحة، بس لما بنحط هذه الاتيكاتات بنظري هذا شيء منه صحي وما بتجلب أشخاص جديدة، بل بالعكس بتخلي الواحد يواجه حيطان مقابله. وما بعرف إذا عم بتحسوا انه هذه اللغه اللي عم تستعمل من بعض المجموعات الجديده لازم تتغير، او عم بتلاقوا لها حلول، او عم تتقبلوا انه هي مش مزبوطه ولازم تتغير؟ ثانك يو.
إلياس، بشكرك. بطريقة ما السؤال الثاني جاوب شوي على السؤال الأول. كحركة لحقي، مثل ما قلت نحن تنظيم قاعدي لا مركزي تشاركي وديمقراطي، ونحن أكثر شيء بنآمن فيه هو الانفتاح على الغير، وهو إنه بهالتنظيم في عندك ناس اقتصاديا على اليسار، في عندك ناس اقتصاديا بالنص، في عندك ناس اقتصاديا مع الفري انتربرينورشيب، بس الكل متفقين انه نحن لازم نكون منحازين للناس، والكل متفقين انه هدفنا هو مواطن متحرر في وطن بيخدم هالمواطن، مش يعني بطريقه شامله. فهذا الشيء بيخلينا نكون منفتحين على الكل، وبيخلينا نقرب من المشكله السياسيه بحلول جديده، لانه مثل ما قلت ما فيك تواجه المشكله بنفس المكونات، ما فيك تلاقي حل للمشكله بنفس المكونات اللي خلقت هالمشكله. بالنسبه لسلاح حزب الله، موقف لحقي موقف كتير بسيط وكتير واضح. نحن مع انه يكون السلاح بس بايدين الجيش اللبناني، وانه يكون الجيش اللبناني التنظيم او السلاح الوحيد على الارض اللبنانيه، هي اللي بتقرر امتى لازم يستعمل السلاح وامتى ما لازم يستعمل السلاح. فموقفنا واضح من هالشغله. هلا بنفس الوقت هالسلاح بيمثل فئه للمجتمع، هيدي الفئه عندها تفاوت معين بالنسبه لهيدا السلاح، بس ظاهريا كلها عم تقول انه هي ما لازم هالسلاح يكون عائق بين انه هالفئه ترجع تجتمع مع بقيه فئات الوطن. فمثل ما قلت انت، ما فينا نجي نخاصم فئه معينه ونخليها برات المعادله. بدنا نخلي كل الفئات يقعدوا على الطاوله ويحكوا سوا، بس من ضمن مبادئ اساسيه. وبالنسبه لهالموضوع المبدا الاساسي انه ما في سلاح غير السلاح الجيش اللبناني على ارض الوطن. هلا كيف بدنا نواجه هيدي الفئه؟ نحن ما عندنا سلاح، نحن ما عندنا ميليشيا، انما في اوقات السلاح ما بيكون لها صوت، في اوقات السلاح ما بيكون لها عازه، ونحن هلا قاطعين بمرحله على الصعيد الداخلي السلاح في يخوف كم شخص، في يضرب كم شخص، بس ما في يغير الثوره عن طريقه، ما في يزيح الثوره عن طريقه. السلاح حمل فاسدين، المنظومه والمافيا والميليشيا اللي هن نفس المنظومه اللي هن ظاهريا ضد بعضهم بس باطنيا مع بعض وعم بيحموا بعض، صارت واضحه للمجتمع انه هالتركيبه سقطت وهالتركيبه ما بقى فيها تكمل. هلا في ناس لاحقين هالتركيبه، نحن شغلتنا انه نحرر هدول الناس ونخليهم يجوا يقعدوا معنا بهالاتفاق اللي عم نجرب نعمله مع بقيه المجموعات حول هالمبادئ اللي نحن عم نجرب نشتغل لها. وهدفنا انه نقنع العالم من كل الفئات بالحوار، بالعمل المشترك، بالاهداف المشتركه، انه هن كمان يتحرروا ويصيروا معنا. نحن ما عندنا سلاح، منا مستعدين نعمل نواجه السلاح بالسلاح، هدول غير مبادئنا، بس السلاح رح يسقط لوحده وقتها ما بيعود عنده اي مبرر او اي سبب انه يكون موجود بالداخل. وبتصور هالسلاح ما بقى عنده غير مبرر او غير سبب انه يكون موجود بالداخل، لا بل عم بيأذي الفئه اللي هو بينتمي لها، عم بيعزل الفئه. هالسلاح عم بيعزل المجتمع تبعه عن بقيه الوطن، وهالمجتمع صار واعي اكثر واكثر بالنسبه لهالشيء.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl. بدي افتح مجال last question اذا حدا بده يسال اخر سؤال. او على فكره I'm going to put the an email address on so that everyone can see it. إذا حدا wants to join the task force to help with the elections, تنظيم elections, or specifically the online voting issue and how we can mobilize in that regard. So any last
Ziad, while we're waiting for the last question, بس بدي أقول شغلة بالنسبة للسلاح هيدا السلاح في يكسر لي عربيتي، في يحرق لي بيتي، في يقتلني جسديا، ياخذ موافقتي له. أنا اليوم رافض أي سلاح برات شرعية الدولة اللبنانية أو الجيش اللبناني. ومجموعة لحقي عندها نفس المبدأ، وفي عدة مجموعات عندهم نفس المبادئ. السلاح فيه يقتلنا بس ما فيه ياخذ موافقتنا، ومن بعدنا في غير عالم مع نفس المبادئ ونفس الرفض. فهيدا السلاح برأيي بلش العد العكسي. اليوم يمكن عم يجرب يحافظ على اللي ربحه بقوة السلاح، بس ما بقى فيه يكمل بنفس طريقة المفاوضات وبنفس المعادلة اللي بلش فيها.
That is true, Carl. I like to make two comments, Zahi, if you don't mind. My first comment, there is hope in 2022, and the hope is that the indicators for that hope that change will happen for sure are the elections that happened على مستوى الجامعات. Normally الأحزاب التقليدية it looks at the elections على تبعول الطلاب as an indicator for fresh blood to their parties. And that went down drastically. And that's a taboo for them. لأنه they are not able to recruit fresh blood, which is a statement that says that people are ready to move in a different direction. And we have to be there ready to grasp that moment and work with it. The other indicator على صعيد local authorities. Now we have a great chance. Local communities are seeing the devastation. They are devastated by the lack of management and the lack of services from those local authorities. And those are places that we can really be successful إذا فاتت مجموعات المجتمع المدني اللي عم تشتغل سياسي على هيك مراكز. That would be the roadmap to get to the parliament at large. When you have a positive influence within your community, you will have a positive influence on in your country at large, in the elected offices, like the parliament and المراكز الفئة الأولى. So with that being said, there is hope, guys. There is great hope. It's just we need to know how to work it out. My next comment, إنه لحقي really is working diligently with the other groups to just raising awareness. That's number one. To educate the public about, to exercise their duty towards themselves, mainly, to have a better future and towards the country. My third comment, السلاح الموجود اللي عم بيهدد اللي موجود بالبلد واللي الكل خايف منه عم بيستعمل لغة التخويف، بس لغة التخويف هي إلى levels and layers. and المواطن العادي ما فينا نلومه لأنه عنده خوف مسك بهالغصن اللي هو معلق على قشرة ورح يوقع، بس هو مش مستعد بعد يتركه لأنه مش شايف عنده البديل اللي يريحه. والبديل اللي بده يريحه مش كلام، هو فعلا نوصل to exercise our responsibilities and rights towards ourselves and the next generation and our country by doing what is it right through elections and moving forward. Do our part in the community. وساعتها منه لحاله العالم بتصير تبعد عن السلاح وبيضعف لانه الاجواء البيئه تبعته بلشت تتغير المعادلات تبعها. So that's how I see it. I don't know if Carl you see it this way.
No, I agree. I agree. Today we have to be pragmatic, and we have to say that the natural environment for Hezbollah, to call the things by the name, is an environment that always felt disregarded by the local government. They always felt that their areas were not important. Nobody was looking after these areas. And suddenly you have a structure that is well organized, that has means, that offers alternatives. And these alternatives are working for them. Now, this organization made the mistake to start also offering bitter things. So they were offering sweet things, schooling, nursing, hospitals, infrastructure, but they also started asking for souls and men to fight. And they reached a stage where, though this organization has done a better work than the government for this natural community, the bill has become extremely heavy. And this natural environment doesn't want to stay in a culture of death. This natural environment would like to join the other environments, would like to join in the country's objectives, in the country's dreams, in the country's purposes. They just want a hand asking them to join. We will be that hand. The thing I wanted to add is that today what's happening in Lebanon makes politics stay on the front burner. People are constantly talking politics, though they hate what's happening, they hate the regime, they hate the politics, they want to complain. Part of them want to do something about it. And so politics remains on the front burner, and it's easy for us, for Lihaqi and other organizations like Lihaqi, to mobilize people and pool resources and use that energy into an action. I think your roles as expats is much harder because, well, as a factual example, today coronavirus is at its highest peak. In the last 2 days, it was at its highest peak. And some of the health authorities are saying it's because we received lots of expats who wanted to come back to Lebanon and celebrate Christmas. So expats coming back to Lebanon will never change. Sometimes they don't feel like coming. Sometimes they want to come just for their parents. But they would like to come. They would like to come and find the country they left, or at least find their families, their friends, their environment. But today, people who have left, a big chunk of them has put a cross on Lebanon. Deep in their heart, they still love their country, they still love their families, their friends, and they're leaving sadness in their heart. So your role as expats is much harder, much tougher. How can you help the other expats regain faith in their power to be the change? To me, this is the real topic of this webinar. It's easy for us in Lihaqi to recruit people and mobilize people who are in Lebanon and who want to contribute to the change. It will be harder for you guys outside of Lebanon to make that change and convince people. We will do what it takes to help you, but you have a tough job ahead of you, but we cannot make it alone. We cannot. We have to count on you. So today's webinar is my call to you, my appeal to you to help us. It's not really the other way around.
That's very inspiring, Carl. Amjad, thank you. I guess we are approaching the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to really quickly conclude. So Oshi, thank you. for this, and we would like to express appreciation for your inspiring presentation and the talk. حديث عن جد كتير شيق. Your depth of understanding is memorable, and you represent a type of charisma that is contagious. Remember, we are to lean on each other if we are going to succeed. And both لحقي and مغتربين مجتمعين in North America and all around the world, including Lebanon, obviously, will always welcome you, and we look forward to further engagement. So I'm going to turn it to Hind.
Okay, as usual, I want to say thank you, Carl, for engaging us in such a wonderful presentation and inspiring one as well. And I want to thank all the participants that logged in from Australia, from Europe, from Kuwait, from Lebanon, and the rest of the Gulf area, and of course, North America and Canada. Thank you for joining us. And just a little bit piece of advertisement. I just want to tell you, we are preparing for other wonderful presentations and sessions on Let's Talk About Lebanon. Our next one coming up soon. That date has to be confirmed by Mohemi Luay Ghandour. That's going to address the charade behind August 4th. It's going to be a very interesting session. Also, we're lining up couple panels session that we're going to address Lehaki's political vision, the one that kind of casually Carl pointed out, and also about the social contract, the civic governance, and the secular governance, and another panel that is going to address the economy again. And so stay tuned and look for our posts on social media. Thank you for joining us. And Carl, the word for you, the last word for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't want to take too much of your time. First of all, I would like to share with you a personal thing. I have a friend I haven't seen since 1990 who has just joined the talk. Hello, Paro. It's been a while. And I'm really happy to see you. And I hope we will soon be working together with the same objective. And on another level, I'm happy to get this opportunity to ask you to help us work on a specific task that is the online elections. And maybe this first task, this first action stream that we can work on together can be the beginning of many others. And I do believe that it's only with taking a first step that we can make a change. So I would like to conclude with one thing. From now on, when it comes to organizing the new political deal, when it comes to organizing and structuring the new political force, I would tell you the only way to succeed is to fire, shoot, aim. Let's try, see what can be fine-tuned, fine-tune it, get to the second level, and other forces, other groups will join us. We can only do better going on, moving forward. So thank you all of you for your interest, and hope I'll soon get a chance to meet you live, each one of you, or at least to be working with you on a common project.
يعطيك العافية.
الله يعافيكم.
Yeah, bye everyone.
Bye, bye-bye.